Thank you very much. I think you realize, I hope you realize, that today is Pie Day. And if you look at your tables, you will see our dessert is a pie. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the mathematical formula for the circumference of a circle. Is that correct? Okay. So for the mathematicians out there, I'd like to have you think about, as you're destroying the circle of the pie on your table and eating it, that this was something that has been, for generations and eons, thought about. So that is our thought for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. So we will do our best to do questions within the room. Please honor our speakers' time today by keeping your questions succinct and one question per person. On Zoom, if you have any questions, please post them into the chat box, and then we will make sure to get to your questions. And at this time, I would like to introduce Eric Kemple to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Alita. We're getting a little bit of feedback on the mic. There we go. I think that's better. That's better. Thank you. So Michael Frerichs was born and raised in the downstate farming community of Gifford, Illinois. He went off to Yale University out east and then returned back to Champaign County and launched his own technology business. He was elected to the Champaign County Board and elected Champaign County Auditor. He also served as a volunteer firefighter, so a lot of different hats. And then in 2006, he was elected Illinois State Senator. He then was elected as Illinois State Treasurer in 2014, and he's been reelected twice and started his third term in January of this year. Treasurer Frerichs believes in providing individuals with the financial tools they need so they can invest in themselves. He does this by encouraging savings plans for college and trade school, increasing financial education among all ages, removing barriers to a secure retirement, and reuniting Illinois residents with their unclaimed property, which may be the way that most of us are most connected to the office. He also now leads a multi-state alliance that allows parents of children with blindness or a disability to save for their child without jeopardizing their federal disability benefits. Now, last time we heard the treasurer speak, I think we were all very impressed with what his office has done in these areas. And personally, I look forward to hearing about how these programs have progressed. I'd also like to point out that under his tenure, the office has earned more than $1.5 billion for taxpayers through safe, smart investing. Hopefully none of that in Silicon Valley Bank. Frerichs was unanimously elected president of the bipartisan National Association of State Auditors, Comptrollers, and Treasurers in 2022. So there's outside recognition of what's been happening within the office here in the state. He was elected by his bipartisan peers to serve as senior vice president of the National Association of State Treasurers in 2022. He serves on that association's executive, long-range planning, and diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. The College Savings Plans Network honored him with its Distinguished Service Award. He also serves as vice chair of the Illinois State Board of Investment, which manages over $23 billion in pension assets for state employees. And as a random side note, I also happen to know he's fluent in Chinese, which is very interesting. So with that, I would like to welcome you all to give a big round of applause for State Treasurer Frerichs. Thank you.
Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Ich heiße Michael Frerichs. Ich bin Finanzminister der Stadt Illinois. Dieses deutsche Club von Rotary, es freut mich sehr, hier zu sein. I'm guessing, I thought you had a German president, you have a German treasurer. I met several German speakers here, but this is a English club. Okay. All right, we'll speak in English for those of you who are a little worried. As Eric pointed out, I spent a little time in Taiwan where I picked up Chinese, where the Taiwanese people were so nice to me and gave me free Chinese lessons every day. You might remember this, I said this the last time I was here. They taught me such phrases as "你很高,你是巨人,你打篮球吗?" which means you are very tall, you are a giant. Do you play basketball? I heard these phrases multiple times while living in Taiwan. I don't hear them nearly as much when I visit the Netherlands. I tend to fit in a little better there. I start off with some interest in languages because I really appreciate Rotary International for really trying to be an international organization and bring together greater international understanding and fellowship in local communities, because I'm a former Rotarian. I'm on the road too much, and I realize you can do makeups, but I'm not frequently in the same community much at all. I tell people that I own a home in Champaign, I own a home in Chicago, I have an apartment in Springfield. Yesterday I was in Washington, D.C. It feels like I live out of my suitcase. I'm moving a fair amount. But I also think that I have one of the best jobs in state government. And I want to share a little bit about how I got to this job, a little about what I do with this job, some recent local news, and then really hopefully save some time for question and answers. That's one of the things I found out about Rotarians, is most of you are not shy. And the vast majority of you are very inquisitive. And if you're not, I don't know why you're part of Rotary, because it's a great place for that. It's what attracted me to Rotary. The different speakers coming in, it gave me an opportunity to hear from different people, to learn something new every week. And so hopefully after I tell you a little about my office, you'll learn something, and then you'll ask some questions and we'll all learn from each other. So the question I get asked frequently is, how did you come to be state treasurer? What's the path? I tell people it's a fairly typical path. I grew up in a small farming community a couple hours south of here and worked in the fields growing up. I graduated from Yale University, where I majored in German. I used that to move to Taiwan, where I taught English and studied Chinese. I came back home, and obviously the next step was to work as a paralegal at a large corporate law firm in New York City before getting a fellowship in public affairs in St. Louis. Coming back home, I started up an engineering company, monitoring bridges for structural integrity, then was asked to become the Champaign County auditor, ran for state senate and state treasurer. So a fairly typical path. Then I'll frequently ask people, do you see what connects these things? Anyone know what connects these things? I'm looking for an answer. I haven't. I'll say this was not a path set out to become state treasurer. What unites all those different jobs is they were all things that were challenging to me, and things that interested me. And I find that if you're a curious person, you try new things, you eventually find out where you need to be. I didn't set off my career to be the state treasurer, but I've ended up in exactly the right place. And let me tell you why. Because I have the best job in state government. Other elected officials can come here and tell you they have the best job, but they would be lying to you. Because my job basically is I make money for the state. We make a lot of it. We've surpassed $1.6 billion in interest income earned for the state of Illinois. We also help people make money, whether that be helping them save for their college education, and I know some of you have used those programs, or helping people save for their retirement so they can have retirement with dignity, so they can enjoy their golden years, or helping out parents who have children with severe disabilities, giving them an avenue to save and give their kids a brighter future that they didn't have before. So we make money, we help people make money and save money, we provide financial education. All these things are fairly popular. People are generally happy with these things. But we're also in charge of unclaimed property. This is fighting on behalf of people in the state to get money that's in a financial institution or a corporation but belongs to our citizens and get it back into their hands. We've returned over $1.5 billion to Illinois citizens since being in office, and that means it's like I get to play Santa Claus 365 days a year, always giving out presents. It's a great job. And we try very hard to improve our state here as well. So I'm the chief investment officer, but we also have investments to try and make an impact in the state of Illinois. I came in, we had a program called Technology Development Accounts. And we went to the General Assembly and asked for their help in changing that program, expanding that program. So we now have a $1 billion investment fund investing in Illinois-based venture capital and private equity and private credit. And the idea is if we can provide access to capital to technology businesses, to startup businesses, businesses that employ people here in the state and help them to grow in this state, the state can make a good return on those investments. But when those companies grow and thrive and hire more people, it's a double win for the state. Not only do we make a return, but we are helping provide opportunity for people. So it's a program that I'm happy with as well. I told you how we've earned over $1.5 billion. I think we've now crushed $1.6 billion in interest income. That's probably the most important part of my job, because we know that every dollar we can earn in interest is a dollar that doesn't have to be raised in taxes, or a dollar that doesn't have to be made in cuts to important programs like our schools, our universities, colleges, roads, and bridges. We take that very seriously. But we also know that there are numerous units of government throughout the state of Illinois. Towns, counties, townships, units of government that have money sitting around, but they don't have a professional investment staff. So we operate a fund we call Illinois Funds. It is a pooled fund of multiple units of government throughout the state of Illinois, and we oversee now about $15 billion in assets there. Because we know that every dollar we can help your local unit of government earn in interest, a dollar they don't have to raise in taxes, or in dollars in cuts they don't have to make to the essential services they provide. So not only do we make money for the state and help people make money for the state, we help create jobs in the state. We're an part of our economic development office as well. And we're helping local units of government. So I want to talk just a little bit more about unclaimed property before we get into some question and answers. This really is something that I've grown to love. It's not why I ran for treasurer, but I came in and got frustrated. Because when I was running for treasurer, I saw the treasurer's office had money for me. I went and asked, how can I get my money? And they said, okay, here you go. Here's a website you can go to. Click on this link, download a form, fill it out, get it notarized, find some supporting documentation that showed you lived at that address, an old power bill or an old water bill, mail it in to us. We'll look at it, and if everything is incorrect, we'll send you a check eventually. If it's not all great, we'll send it back to you, and the process will start all over again. It was $25. And for $25, I said, I don't want to go through that hassle. And when I came into office, I realized it wasn't just me, because I ran into people all the time who said things like, oh, treasurer, you've got my money. I said, great, we'd love to give it to you. And they said, nah, it's too much work. Well, one, it's my job to return that. Two, I couldn't keep the money if they wanted me to. And three, I know that when we put that money back into people's pockets, even if it's only $25, especially if it's $25, if you had $25 extra dollars, maybe you might say, hey, I'm going to go out for lunch. Maybe we gave you $75, you might take your spouse out for a dinner. If we gave you $100, maybe you might go shopping. And that money circulating throughout local businesses, local restaurants, does more good for our economy than it does sitting in a bank vault in Springfield. So I've made that a priority. And we went to the General Assembly and said, we need to make this easier for people to claim their monies. And so we got passed legislation allowing e-claiming. We drug a paper-bound system in the 20th century into the 21st century. So now, rather than all this exchange of paper, it's easier. People can upload a document, they can take a picture of documents, send them to us. It's easier for the people of the state, and it's easier and more efficient for our office because they're loaded directly into our database, and we don't have to deal with paper and opening mail. We also realize, though, that when we ask you to provide proof of where you lived, that's important. We need to know you lived at that address. We know this money belongs to you. But I remembered, I went to the bank for a mortgage several years ago. They printed out a long sheet of paper. and it showed every address that I had lived at. It showed if I'd been late on any credit card payments. It showed if I'd been late on any other bills out there. The internet knows where you have lived. So why are we making people dig through their files or folders from 10, 15 years ago to send us a water bill? So we passed something called Fast Track, which uses the power of the internet to do a search and verify that someone lived there. That's allowed us to return hundreds of thousands of more claims we had before. To put this into perspective, in 2003, this office returned about 25,000 properties in a year. Before I took office, the year before I took office, we returned approaching 60,000 properties in a year. Last year, we returned over 225,000 properties. We did this by making it easier, changing the way we're marketing, doing things like money match, passing legislation which allowed us in some cases to just mail checks to people's house if we can confirm their social security number and their address through publicly available databases. It is fun to return money. But a couple of you have mentioned something else that was in the news lately. It was in our newsletter. That also is incredibly fun and rewarding. Because not only do people lose track of money in financial institutions, in companies, people put their valuables into safe deposit boxes in banks. And not every person with a safe deposit box tells their children or their spouses where they have hidden their valuables. Matter of fact, it's quite common. Everyone knows they're not going to live forever, but they don't think they're going to die tomorrow. And I don't want to tell my kids about where I have all my money. So people will put valuables in those boxes when they pass away and no one collects them. And people have sold the house and the letters don't go to the family. They get turned over to us. And it's our job to return these things. Now, money is easy to store in financial institutions. It's digital. We can store billions and billions of dollars, and the banks don't run out of room, and they don't tell us, stop, that's enough. But physical property takes up space. And as we bring more and more in, we start to run out of space in our vaults. And so with our physical property, we will auction off that property. If after about 10 years, we can't track down the rightful owners or their heirs, we will hold an auction, sell these physical properties off. And people say, well, that's great. You're making money for the state. We are not selling this for the benefit of the state. We are converting physical property into a cash equivalent. So let's say your Mickey Mantle rookie card that you prize and put in a bank safe deposit box, and you pass away and forget about it, and your children don't know about it. We try for 10 years to track you down or your heirs, and we're unsuccessful. We will auction that card off. And the $1,500 that it sells for, we will make a note of. And so if in 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, your heirs or their heirs come to us and say, that was my grandfather's card, they will not get that Mickey Mantle baseball card. But they will get the $1,500 that it sold for at our auction. We're basically converting it into cash, which is easier for us. Now, we will sell off most things. But one of the things that we will never sell is military medals. A lot of people who come back from service and they're valuable. They don't want them to be lost. They don't want to be stolen. They don't want them to burn in a fire. And so they put them in a bank safe deposit box where they think it's really safe. But too often, people forget about these. They don't tell people about them. And so we recently had 11 Purple Hearts in our possession. I saw this when I first came into office. We had a display box of a bunch of interesting things found in safe deposit boxes. And I saw a Purple Heart in that display box. And I'd never seen a Purple Heart in person before, so I asked to see it. And as a treasurer, my staff didn't tell me no. And I said, this is pretty cool. Who does it belong to? Oh, it belongs to someone. I said, so then why don't we track them down and return it? So we began deputizing my staff and turning them into detectives to help return these Purple Hearts. We returned 7 Purple Hearts and just returned our 8th. We now have 10 more in our possession that we're trying to find the owners of. And I can tell you that these meetings with the recipients of the Purple Hearts or their children are some of the most rewarding parts of my job, when you get to hear the stories, or you get close to hearing the stories. Because a lot of these people, you earn a Purple Heart by being wounded or killed in battle. The stories aren't always so easy to tell. And so last Sunday, we returned a Purple Heart to the daughters of a veteran who had been wounded in Vietnam, died too young at age 48, Kenneth Wiest. And talking to his daughters, I asked, did he ever mention how he earned that Purple Heart? And I said, Dad just didn't talk about Vietnam. We know he served there, but clearly it was traumatic. He just would avoid it. And that wasn't a surprise to me, because we returned one Purple Heart to a gentleman who was living in Mississippi. We finally tracked him down thanks to the power of the internet. We called him and said, we have your Purple Heart. Where can we mail it? And he said, do not put that in the mail. I will drive up and collect it myself. See, when he came back from Vietnam, he was transient. He was moving around. He didn't want to lose his medal. He gave it to his mother. His mother put it in a bank safe deposit box, didn't tell him the name of the bank. And when she passed away, he didn't know where to claim it. He thought his medal had been lost forever. And so when we told him, he said, I've been looking for that medal for years. I'll come claim it. Don't put it in the mail. I don't want to risk losing it again. And he came up and I asked him, how did you earn this? And this grown man started to, his lips quivered, his eyes watered, and his son, who was there with him, said, Dad doesn't talk about that, period. It's traumatic for a lot of people. He said, we don't have to know this. What I do know is anyone who earned a Purple Heart earned it. You can't buy that valor. You can't buy that. We won't sell that off, and we will continue to track down the rightful owners for however long as it takes. And that is a rewarding part of this job. Now, there are many things we do, and I touched on several of them. There are probably more things that we do that I didn't touch on. But as I started this off by saying, I want to give you a little idea of who I am and where I came from, a little idea of what we do here. I really would like to have a discussion about this office, what might interest you, or what questions you might have. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Any questions in the room?
Hi, Treasurer Frerichs. I'm Clint Krislov. I tout your site to all my friends and neighbors, and I look up people from Abraham Lincoln to Barack Obama to my cousins, and I just did a search on at least one of the people here, and they have money sitting with you.
Thank you.
And I have.
You will let them know that.
I will let them know.
I'm not going to put them on spot on camera, but before you leave, they will know.
I wasn't going to say their name, but anyway, I do that. And at times people think it's creepy, but it actually gives me a great deal of satisfaction to find money for people. Yeah. What the heck? It doesn't cost them anything. It's a great system. There is one thing that years ago, we had a class action case where we had 3 people that after 20 years, we still couldn't find them. So we did a voluntary report to your office, but we never heard back. We never heard back. And I would like to get those 3 people's money over to you from the account that it's sitting in for interest. But anyway, I commend you for the job that you're doing.
Great. Well, Clint, thank you very much. I have 2 members of my staff sitting right in front of you. If you guys could, a card or so, and make sure we follow up with Clint. I will say, we try to make it easier for you when you find people who have money. There's now a feature on our website which allows you to send an email to them. It will come from us saying, John Doe, your friend Clint Krislov found money for you. This is from the state treasurer's office. Here is how you can start your claim. We're trying to make it easier for people if you can't reach them on the phone, if you know their email address, to help us with that. The other change I think we've made since coming into this office is before, we will never charge you to claim your money. Anyone saying they're going to take a cut or a finder's fee is not us. We don't charge that, but we have, since taking office, passed legislation allowing us to pay interest for properties up to a certain number of years. If you don't claim it after 10 years, you'll stop earning interest. But that's another change we've made. So, thank you, Clint.
Well, I'm going to break the rules and ask two questions.
Sure.
First question, that $1,500 you get for the Mickey Mantle card, does the state earn interest on that? Do you invest those monies as well?
We do. We invest that money, and that's part of the reason we pay interest up for a certain number of time.
Excellent.
Years.
So that was an easy one. Second question, in terms of finding those Purple Heart recipients, have you worked with the Union League Club at all and the Armed Forces Council here?
We have not worked with the Union League Club. We have reached out to various VFW posts, state VFW, American Legion to help. There is a group dedicated to Purple Heart recipients that's also helping us get this word out. But I will tell you why it's difficult. And I thought, like, great, this is a great honor. People will know this. But one, too many people came back and never talked about their experience. We tracked down one woman and said, is this Jane Doe? And she said, yes, it is. We have your father's Purple Heart. And her response was, my father never earned a Purple Heart. Now we know here in a Purple Heart is a Purple Heart is a Purple Heart. It doesn't matter which conflict you earned it in, they look the same. In most cases, at least for the last 40 years, they don't engrave people's names or a theater of conflict where they earned it. Purple Heart looks the same. So that's difficult to return. There's no national database that the military keeps on Purple Heart recipients. Makes it difficult. And sometimes people will just put their Purple Heart into a safe deposit box. But in this case, her father had put his Purple Heart, his military discharge papers, a couple other medals he earned in there. And so we were pretty sure who the recipient was. He had just passed away. But he came back from Korea and never talked about that time in his life. His daughter was unaware he earned a Purple Heart. And so these are some of the reasons why it's difficult to return them. That, and there are some people who the trauma of war deeply affects them. We actually did track down one Purple Heart recipient. He has moved to California. He is living off the grid. He has little interaction with people, but we tracked down someone who knew him because he would come into town for groceries or mail every couple of weeks or so. And we let that person know, if you can get word to him, who has Purple Heart, word came back, he said, not interested. Don't want it. I moved on. Don't want to revisit that. So we haven't given up hope completely. We will try again. We'll eventually try and track down children and see if they have some interest if he's left anyone behind. But sometimes it's hard because people just don't want to claim.
I'm interested in what you talked about for entrepreneurship and possible innovation. Recently, I became a member of the Polsky Institute at the University of Chicago. Does the Treasurer's Office do any outreach to students and faculty?
All right, so the way this works is I live down in Champaign. University of Illinois does a lot of world-class research, has produced a lot of great companies. So first commercial web browser, Netscape, basically grew out of research done at the University of Illinois. If you go back a while, transistors came out of U of I. LED lighting. Companies like PayPal and ePay started by U of I engineers. So there's been great economic development come out of the university. Unfortunately, many of those companies grew in California. And I would work around the research park at the University of Illinois and talk to these companies. And it was clear when they were looking for money, when they were looking for investors to help them grow, if the venture capital funds from Silicon Valley would fly in and meet with them, frequently I'd say, this is a good company. We'd be interested in investing in you. However, our first bit of advice is you have to move out to the Bay Area. And I would say that there is some nice water out in the Bay Area, but there's no magic in that water. We've got a pretty nice body of water right here. What we found is when Illinois-based venture capital funds invested in ideas out of the University of Illinois, none of them suggested you have to move out to Silicon Valley. They said you can stay here or you can move to Chicago. And so the whole impetus behind this is we need to increase our venture capital community here, the amount of venture capital to keep a lot of these ideas. So we don't do outreach into students so much, but venture capitalists, private equity, they're out looking for opportunities. We help fund them, and then they decide what companies they want to fund. We want to make money off of this investment. We want to make sure, though, we grow jobs here in the state of Illinois. So yes, we do go out and we speak to people and let them know about this. If we find entrepreneurs in various settings, and we'll put them in touch with venture capital firms that we invest in. And the hope is to help grow a bunch of companies. What Silicon Valley had over Chicago was they had a core. There were a lot of tech companies there. And it was just easy to collaborate and to get ideas from other people. But through 1871 and other labs, economic development labs like that, we now have more entrepreneurs working together. And I think there's an ecosystem here in the state of Illinois that, with enough capital, has grown large enough that it has the ability to attract and grow even more so. And I think what you see is Chicago has become the tech hub for the Midwest. There's still a very thriving, successful tech community in Silicon Valley, despite the cratering of their bank. You find in the other Bay Area in Massachusetts a vibrant community, but there is more we can do to make sure that Chicago remains the unofficial capital of the Midwest and is the center of innovation throughout the Midwest. That's what we try and do. Clint. Oh,
sorry about that.
I did not see there.
No worries. Kwame Crawford with the Veterans Treatment Court. Wanted to ask, is your office willing to take the Purple Hearts that you've retained that don't belong to anyone, or for those who don't want them, is your office willing to lend them out to VFWs, veteran organizations that may or may not have museums, to put them on display?
That would take a change in state legislation. If there were veterans organizations really committed to that idea, like I am a fiduciary, I'm in charge of safeguarding these. And so I don't have the ability to lend them out. I don't have the ability to give them out. If someone says they don't want it, that's their right to say, but they can't say, keep it, give it to someone else. My job is to return it to the rightful owner. If the rightful owner doesn't want it or wants to donate it or give it to a veterans association, more than happy to have them do that, but we can't do that. Now, in some of these cases, we had them for a long time, and there was strong support in the veterans community that came to the General Assembly. We could change that law, but that's what it would take.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. All
Sure.
right. This is I think the third time that you've appeared before our Rotary Club. And each time you come, I go home to my wife and tell her how lucky we are to have someone competent like you, who's creative and very good at what you do.
This is putting me on the spot. This is the best comment I've heard so far.
But my question is, given your competence, the wide range of your background, why haven't you gone for higher political office?
So I will say a couple of things. You put me on the spot here. I'll try and be honest with you. One, I got divorced about 10 years ago, and I fought very hard for joint custody of my daughter. She was 4 years old at the time. I was running for treasurer at the time. I made a promise and a commitment that I would be home 50% of the time to be with her. And this is one of the best jobs in state government. One of the reasons it's a great job, it allows me enough flexibility. I mean, we do important things, but it's rare that something happens and they call the treasurer at 3 a.m. in the morning and say, we need the treasurer to be present. I say rare, it's never happened in 8 years. That does happen to governors. People who serve in DC, members of Congress or senators, they're gone 3, maybe 4 days a week, maybe 40 weeks out of the year. I made a commitment to my daughter, to raising her, and so she's 14 now, and I just haven't wanted to do anything else but this. But then the other real answer to your question is, one, it's time management, and two, this really is one of the best jobs in state government. Maybe I didn't make that clear to people, or they didn't believe me. I'm serious. I take great joy in knowing that we're helping hundreds of thousands of young people go to college and graduate with less debt. I think I told this story the last time I was with you. The big reason why I ran for treasurer, was because I'm the first generation of my family to go to college. I'm the second generation to attend high school. None of my 4 grandparents attended high school. They dropped out in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. And I remember that time, and I think I told this story before, when I went home to my mom and dad, and I said, Mom, Dad, I got into Yale. My dad looked at me and said, good for you, but you ain't going. What do you mean I'm not going? We can't afford it. What do you mean we can't afford it? You didn't even look at how much it cost. And my dad said, I don't have to look at how much it costs. I know we can't afford it. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. They didn't have a lot of money, and they didn't save money for college. And so we eventually made it work. And I graduated from Yale, but I graduated with a fair amount of debt. And I decided that I was going to do what I could to give more kids greater opportunity and to hopefully help them graduate with less debt. And when I realized we had college savings programs, and there's something I could do to improve them, became a big passion of mine. I ran for this office to help give more opportunity. And when I first came into office, I talked to our investment advisors and said, we're going to change the way we market. What do you mean? I said, well, we just don't have a lot of low income, lower middle class, working families saving for college, because it was much easier for them and more profitable to market this program to the most affluent. I mean, they would rather have one account with $100,000 than 1,000 accounts with $100 each. And I get that. I said I didn't run for office to give tax breaks to the wealthy. If they want to take advantage of them, I'm not going to stop them from doing it, but that's not what I'm going to put my time and effort into. I'm going to put my time and effort into marketing differently. And they said, Treasurer, that's just going to be more expensive, and we know you don't like us, and you're going to make changes to the program. I said, oh, you followed my campaign. I said I would make changes in the program. If you work with me and make these changes in how we market and who we sign up, and we get more families signing up, I can run for re-election saying I made changes to the college savings program. If you do not work with me and don't make these changes, I will make a change. That's up to you. You can be part of the change, or you can be the change. They ultimately decided to be the change. We hired a new financial advisor, new financial manager, and as a result, we took our program, according to Morningstar, from bronze to gold rating. I think the only double rating upgrade any state has received before. Top 3 program in the country. 5 years in a row, we got gold ratings for our Bright Start program. And so why would I want to do anything else? We took it from about 385,000 accounts to over 850,000 accounts. We were about $7 billion in assets to over $16 billion in assets. And that's after having families paid out over $6 billion in tuition. And so I love this job. And I'm a believer that as long as there's a challenge in front of me, I'm excited. If this office ever becomes stale or boring and I can't find another challenge, then I'll look to do something else.
Yes, Timo.
So, Michael, first of all, thank you for being here or there while I'm not there. Greetings from London. I'm in part, I'm one of the culprits why you were there today. So thank you for being there while I'm not. Now the time has come for the German test. You proudly spoke German earlier. I've collected all the questions from my brethren here, but I think we'll have to take this to a breakout room, not to embarrass you. But more importantly, I would like to thank you for being there. And our club is one where we don't have the mandatory attendance. If you're a former Rotarian, here is the hand reaching out to you. Please join us, because you can join us whenever you can. We'd love to have you. That's all I want to say. The German test will be a private lesson. We'll do that later.
Well, I will look forward to that Prüfung, but I'm going to take you up on that, or not take you up on that, because I was told that a recent reading of your bylaws said that elected officials are not supposed to be full members of Rotary 1. Is that maybe an honorary member and attend?
We have a ton of lawyers on the members here, so we can figure this out.
And I know that lawyers can argue both sides of an issue.
Anyway, thank you, sir. Just want to say hi real quick. Thank you.
Right. Timo, danke.
Thank you so much
Okay.
for being here today. And we want to give you a wonderful cup to remember us by. And when eventually you're no longer treasurer, you can come and be a member. Thank you. Okay, sorry online, we're just running low on time. What's next? We would like to, are there any visiting Rotarians in the room? Any visiting international Rotarians in the room? Nope. I know we do have one visitor in the room. Kwame, if you'd like to get up and introduce yourself. I'm sorry you don't have the mic, but. Thank you. Are there any visiting Rotarians on the Zoom? Visiting international Rotarians? Other visitors? Anybody speak? Okay. Oh, great. Awesome. So for announcements. All right. So our Rotary One fundraiser is at Donk House on March 23rd. It's a taste of Germany. Where's my picture? Awesome. From 5:30 to 8 o'clock. We would love to have anyone come out and join us and be a part of the great things that we do and help us support the Rotary One Foundation's mission to help us with our international and local service projects. And then also for our annual campaign, at this moment, the Rotary One Foundation has $25,205 that we've raised this year. And for the Rotary International Foundation, $2,740. Once again, our wonderful members, you'll be receiving an email to please sign up for your annual giving so that that can be automated and make everyone's life easier and less complicated. Also, next is our Job One program. So for those who are not aware, we have a wonderful program called Job One, where we mentor and recruit Chicago high school juniors and seniors to have a wonderful summer internship program in which we give them wonderful job training and pair them with great jobs. So we are seeking students. The applications in on Friday. So what I am looking for our members is anyone who would like to help us to look over the 65 applications that we have right now as of last night at 10 o'clock, and I went through every single one of them, 65 applications to help us rate and review them and pick our wonderful students. So if you are interested in that, please send me an email or contact the office. And we are also looking for employers and sponsors. If you would like to be an employer for one of our wonderful students, please reach out to us. If you can't be an employer because for whatever reason you can't hire children or people under 18, please help us sponsor a wonderful nonprofit to hire our students. And then we have our CPS Opportunity Grant, which is what our wonderful money that we raise at our fundraiser helps us do. The Rotary Club of Chicago is now accepting applications from current CPS schools and teachers for grants up to $3,000. For more information, please visit the website on how to apply for those grants. All applications are due on April 2nd. Please look at the gyrator or the Rotary One calendar for all upcoming meetings, committee meetings, and all our fun things we're going to do. And with that, I will ask Marga, put her on the spot, to help me in this meeting by leading the four-way test. If everyone please stand up.
All right, thank you. Well, we are going to recite now the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Number one, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And number 5.
Will it be fun? Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Alita.
Thank you. And with that, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.